So, welcome back to the channel. It's been about, I don't know, 15 years since I've last posted anything, and that is mainly due to two reasons. One, I have a life, so, you know, personal circumstances and all that kind of stuff. And two, I've been lazy, just putting it out there. But yeah, we're so back, guys. We're so fucking back. As you can clearly tell, there's been a great upgrade to the recording studio. We've gone from filming on the floor to filming on a actually pretty wobbly, lifelong folding white picnic table on a nice USMC woolly blanket, which is likely more expensive than the table itself. But anyways, I'm also now filming on a camera, which is, you know, new, a DSLR, which means that in 20 minutes I'm going to have to stop the recording and record again, because that's as long as this camera records, as well as using a lapel mic. I know the quality of the audio and video are just through the roof compared to my old videos. The 4K 1080 definition is just too much. But yeah, jokes aside, I'll try to bring you guys a bit of an exciting, different video, as I've somehow decided to become VFC's #1 unofficial shill. And this thing showed up to my door, which is the very newly released VFC XM16E1. So yeah, I thought I would show it to you guys to give you a bit of an idea, a bit of a preview, a bit of an overview, much like I did with the XM148. So yeah, this is going to be a relatively short video. I'm sure it will be 40 minutes in the end. But yeah, just give you guys a bit of an insight about the weapon, the details. There's not going to be any shooting, at least shooting of BBs, simply because I don't have the provisions. I don't have a firing range. I'm not going to do it in my garden in case a neighbor thinks I'm insane. I know it's a BB gun, but fuck knows really. And frankly, I'm not really interested in the performance of, you know, shooting. I'm sure it's fine. It's a, you know, it's a VFC replica. They tend to be pretty good. So you could look at other reviews from VFC, whether it's the XM177E2 or any other weapons, and get a good idea of how it works. This is mainly going to be function as well as, I guess you could say, some of the details of it. So yeah, of course, history-wise, not going to spend a ton of time on it, but this is the Colt 603, which was adopted by the Army in 1964 as the XM16E1. X in XM16, which stands for experimental, as this rifle was not fully matured yet, it was not fully developed, and after a number of revisions and changes, this rifle will be changed and adopted as the M16A1 in late 1967, which means that for pretty much most kits before 1967, you will need one of these. So yeah, it's pretty good to have a good high quality replica of this specific rifle, as to be able to indulge on those kind of earlier war kits, other than the Yadrang Valley. I know it is the funny Mel Gibson movie, but there's so much more that you can do. Just stop marketing it as the Yadrang Valley rifle. Stop it. It's just not. Anyways, yeah, that kind of roughly concludes the history of it. I can go a hell of a lot more into detail, but there's no real point in that. There's plenty of videos about it. Anyways, let's start by another part that I'm, I think, morally obligated to do, which is the unboxing. If you've seen my XM148 video, you know what is coming. Is another one of those like obscene blue boxes with a big ass code logo on it, as well as Cybergun. Because yes, this replica, much like the XM148, was licensed by Cybergun, who has a licensing agreement with Colt, which allows them to have realistic trades on the replicas, which is cool, right? I'm happy about that, but they really don't want you to forget that it was Cybergun that licensed it. So much so that it's on both fucking sides. It also has a very nice shiny sticker thing that looks like a Nintendo game from the 90s. But anyways, for anyone that cares, here's what comes in the box. I really don't know who watches this kind of crap, but if you do and you like it, this is a treat. Nothing particularly exciting. You got a box for your magazine, you got some spacers in the middle to make sure everything's fine, and a very big heavy plastic bag that I'm going to throw into the ocean after this video. So yeah, that concludes the unboxing. I'll throw this somewhere in the room. You also get this, a bunch of goodies in the box. Gas shield, as always, no one cares. Safety precautions that no one has ever read, ever. And the manual, which the manual actually is somehow even less helpful than the XM148 one. It's about 2 pages long, and it doesn't even talk about the XM16. It talks about the Colt M4, which I'm not stupid. I know the manual of arms is pretty much the same, but you know, would have been nice to have, you know, one specifically for the XM16, as this is not particularly helpful for anyone that has not, you know, manipulated sort of an M16 style rifle. But I'm, you know, exaggerating, but it still would have been nice. Just putting it out there. You also get in the pack a BB loader to add to your collection. I'm sure every one of us has about 15 of these in our house somewhere. If you look between the cushions of the couch, you'll likely have one of these hidden. And comes also with a bit of a nozzle thing, just to you know, load magazines a bit more efficiently, as you cannot necessarily load them you know, by hand. But yeah, that's that. So we can start looking into the replica. And also, knowing that we're going to look at the replica, we're also side by side going to have my original M16, just to compare a couple things in terms of little details, because of course this is a rifle that precedes it, and we can kind of compare the differences between the XM16 and the M16E1, because it's actually pretty well reproduced. We're going to start from the back to the front. So yeah, here we go. Starting from the back, we got the stock. Wait a minute. Yeah, I kind of cheated because this is an original stock. Matter of fact, the stock, the pistol grip, and the handguard are all originals that I managed to fit. This thing spent 5 minutes in my house, and I already fucked with it. Again, putting in grip and changing a couple things. But yeah, this is an original stock. But here's the one that actually came with the rifle, which is this one. It's the right stock. It's the D stock, which is great to see, nicely reproduced. Doesn't have quite the same amount of gloss as an early stock, or an early D stock at least. However, if you compare it to the one on my M16, actually has very similar color. This is just not nearly as worn out. But it's nicely reproduced. You got your sling swivel at the rear, nicely rubberized. You got your roll pin. You got your sticker that I haven't taken off yet. Very nice, solid, squishy rubber butt pad without the trap, which is good. The only issue that I have with this stock is that it's really, really hollow. I don't know if you can actually hear it, but it really is very, very hollow. But it's good to have. It's a good repro. Out of the box, it's fine. It's just me being a bit nitpicky. So yeah, that's pretty good. Moving on, we can start looking at the receiver. Now, one of the things that jumped out at me, and okay, it's not terrible. It's not like the end of the world, but I think it could have been done a bit better, which is the color. Excuse me. The color itself is a bit dark. It's not black. It's not quite black like, say, a WE is, but it's not cold gray yet. It's a very, very dark gray that is almost leaning to black, but it's not quite black yet, as you can clearly tell. I'm hoping that with some time and some wear, it'll kind of wear out and lighten up a little bit and fade. Hopefully, it's painted. It's not anodized or anything funny like that. It would have been cool if it was, but you know, it's sub $600 gas blow bag, so I'm not necessarily expecting anodization, but it would have been nice anyways. But it's not quite cold gray yet. We're gonna compare it to my M16. I know some people may be like, "Oh, your M16 is too worn out to compare." Yeah, granted, but on this side, it's actually not nearly as worn out, and you can very clearly tell that kind of, it's dark gray as well, but it's not nearly as dark as the one on the VFC. I don't know if that actually comes across the camera well. It's my first time using this setup. Do not bully me. But anyways, it's, yeah, I would have liked if it was a bit lighter in color. But this is not the end of the world. You can always Cerakote it. You can always paint it. Matter of fact, I'm thinking I may paint mine after this video. But yeah, that's just, again, be nitpicking. Now, moving on to the rest of the receiver, starting off by the charging handle. I'm hoping that the camera actually focuses, because again, I've never really used it this close. Very simple. You got your little pincher that you can just pull back, and that will allow you to pull the charging handle back, as otherwise it would be blocked onto the receiver. Works just fine. Of course, works perfectly fine in conjunction with a bolt. One thing to note is that it's better for you to let go of the charging handle at the back, because if you accompany the movement until the receiver, the charging handle may not actually lock in place. I don't know if that's coming through on the camera, but it's not fully locked yet. You will have to push it forward for it to actually do that. So again, if you want to charge the replica, I would again just carry it to the very end. But it works fine. The corners are a bit sharp compared to an original one, but you know, I'm guessing over time it'll wear out a bunch and look perfectly fine. So that's, you know, no thrills there, nothing particularly strange. Continuing down, we have our forward assist, which is one of the most, one of the innovations that came with the XM16, as the models before did not have it, and this was a modification imposed by the Army, as they wanted a way to, you know, lock the bolt-in battery without having to use the charging handle, as the charging handle is not attached to the bolt directly, illustrating that. If now well, you know, hypothetically, if I wanted to push the bolt forward, I can't because the charging handle is not connected. So in that case, you would use your forward assist. I'm talking with the bolt locked back, but you get the idea. Forward assist is the right type, teardrop shaped. I don't know how well that is coming on camera, with nice checkering on it, just fine, nothing particularly weird about that. It is a different color than the rest of the receiver, which is fine, because these parts were steel, they were not aluminum like the rest of the receiver, so they were parkerized, whereas the rest of the body was anodized, which is a different finish. Again, if we look at my real M16, you will see that that is definitely a different color compared to the rest of the receiver. Now, it doesn't work on the VFC, it's completely useless, as you see. The sniper button does not work, which, you know, that's that. Continuing forward, I'll get to the controls in a second. It's just going to be better to see them on the other side. The pistol grip. This one is, again, an original one. This is the one that actually came with the replica. If I can get it, there we go. It's fine. I mean, it's the right type. Doesn't have any checkering on the back. Doesn't have the HU finger groove, I guess you could call it. The only thing is that this pistol grip will not, well, sorry, a real one will not work on the replica. Let me explain. It will fit on the replica. However, if you look at the top of this pistol grip, if you know your ARs, you will see that there's a bit of an issue with it. It doesn't have a hole on the side. The hole on the side is meant for the spring that would contain the detent for the selector, right? The spring on the VFC is about that big. The spring on a real AR is about that big, roughly. I'm very exaggerated. I put a photo somewhere. Which means that, you know, a real pistol grip has a hole there. So what happens is that if you put a real pistol grip without modifying it or using the original spring into the VFC, the loader spring is going to go inside of the hole of the pistol grip, and the selector is no longer going to work because the detent is not working as it should. So you have two options. You either fill up the hole. I had a screw that kind of just drops in and actually fills it enough to allow the VFC spring to work, or you use an original spring as well as an original pistol grip, which works as well. I've tried both and it works fine. Just again, pointing it out, I put a comparison photo somewhere, and yeah, that's just a bit of a fun fact about it. They fit, they're compatible somewhat, so yeah, that's just fine. Continuing on, we've got our trigger. Nothing particularly exciting about that. It's a trigger. Here's the trigger pull if anyone is interested. There's got a bit of take. It's not a one stage, two stage. Let's see if I can actually show it. Yeah. There it is. And then it breaks. And there's the reset. Again, for anyone that cares. Whoever does, don't know. You got your trigger guard, which works much like the real thing. You have a detent that you can press and fold the bottom of the trigger guard down, which allows you to use it in conjunction with, say, mittens or winter gloves. So that will be your quote-unquote winter trigger thing. So yeah, perfectly normal there. And we start getting into what interests me the most about this rifle, which is the lower and the fencing. When we talk about fencing, we refer to this kind of, well, yeah, fence. The XM16E1 has a partial fencing, which means that the fencing does not go all around the magazine release. When you compare it to, again, an M16A1, you will see the fact that that fencing goes all the way around the magazine release, right? The XM16 did not have that. Matter of fact, that fencing was put there in place the first time just so you can actually reach for the dust cover and be able to pull it up more efficiently, because before that you kind of had to use your nail and it was not the most comfortable thing on the planet. But anyways, this is something that not many companies have been able to reproduce correctly. There's Classic Army, but that's an AEG. There's of course DNA and Vipertech, but those are tremendously expensive. But other companies have tried to reproduce the XM16E1 fencing, and they are absolutely horrendous. The SEMA and the ENC one, ENC is SEMA repackaged, let's not kid ourselves. They took an M16E1 receiver, they chopped up the fencing, they kept the side profile of the M16E1, and they called it an of the M16E1, and they called it an XM16E1, which that doesn't work that way. If you pay close attention, first of all, you will see that the fencing here actually does not reach the very end of this profile. It just stops midway through the magazine release, right? You will also notice that below the magazine release, there's a curve. It's not completely flat. And that's something I've seen done on, again, the SEMA ones, the ENC ones. The Anubis Custom, that is like horrendously expensive, also has that part completely fucked up, and it looks horrible. So I'm really glad that they managed to get the profile of that part correct on the VFC one. Frankly, I really, really like it. It's got the right shapes, it's got the right curves, it's got the right fencing. It's really, really good. So kudos to them for getting that fencing right. And again, just for comparison, M16A1 fencing on top, and well, actually, let's just take the magazine out. It's going to be a bit more convenient. There we go. M16A1 fencing on top, XM16 on the bottom. There's also the transitional XM16s that do have full fencing, but I'm not going to talk about those because those are a trip. I've actually been lucky enough to handle one of those, but anyways, that's a subject for another day. Magazine release, just fine. Typical magazine release, nothing particularly exciting about that. I believe this is the 1965 model. I believe there's also an interim magazine release, because there's the first one with the checkering, with the lines. Then there's the interim one, which has the profile of these circles are way thinner, which is also called the Mini Circles magazine release. Very original, I know. And then you got the final design, which seems to be this one. I'll put a photo somewhere as to explain and show the difference, if you can notice it. But it's just fine as a magazine release. It looks good for this kind of rifle. It's not inaccurate. It's perfectly fine. Continuing on, we've got the DOD stamp, which is very cool. DOD stands for, Department of Defense. Which, weapons were stamped with this when they were sent to Vietnam to, again, prove that this, U.S. property, U.S. ownership. And it's a neat detail to have it, on these replicas. When you take it out of the box, it looks like a mint rifle. And mint rifles would have this marking. However, I think after the video, I'm likely going to wear mine out because, originally these were painted. And, a little paint stamp on a rifle that you're going to use in combat is not going to last awfully long. Matter of fact, most of the ones you use in countries just do not have it because they just faded out. So again, need to have it. Not something necessary. If you want to use it for reenacting, I would kind of fade it a little bit. Maybe use a bit of nail polish to take it off. And yeah, just very cool, very good. Looking at the upper, we have, again, the right type of upper. No brass deflector, thank God. And the dust cover is the right type of dust cover. We can see the shape of this piece right here is rectangular. It's not a square, which is what it should be. When you actually open the bolt, you will be able to see that kind of hexagonal shape. It is not completely rounded. And again, if we go out and compare it with a real dust cover, you can see again the same kind of rectangular shape, as well as that hexagonal shape for the dust cover, which is just fine. My only pet peeve with this dust cover is that it looks a bit black. It looks a bit gray. Well, dark gray, sorry. Kind of has a bit of a blue hue to it. Ideally speaking, those pieces would be parkerized and would be gray. It's not a hard piece to replace. Brownell sells them for about 25 bucks a pop, and they're parkerized. They look just fine. I have one flying around somewhere in the house that I will likely replace with once the video is done. I just want to show you how it is out of the box. And the other thing that I think is a bit weird is if you look at the profile of this area right here, it seems to end a bit too high compared to the real one. But that's really just nitpicking. If you look at the real one, you can see that that little fold ends a bit lower, but that's just me. Continuing on, we have the markings on the very top of the receiver. I'll get to those in a second when we start talking about markings in general. And then we have our rear sight. Rear sight is very simple. You got this adjusting wheel, and to adjust it, what you would do is you use the tip of a cartridge to push this little detent towards, well, the inside, and then you will be able to turn your, the adjusting wheel. If you turn it to the right, clockwise, it will adjust the rifle to the right. If you turn it anti-clockwise, it will adjust the rear sight to the left. So it's very simple, very straightforward. Reproduced, works fine. I'm not going to show you because we don't care about that. But anyways, following on, we have our, well, a bit of a, you know, the hole at the top to be able to attach a scope, which normally would be an AN PVS2 night vision scope, but you can also put one of those cold scopes on it if you are a tryhard. One of the things that they got right, which I'm very happy about, is the rear sight, which is going to be very, very challenging to show on video because it's a bit of an awkward spot, and the recording studio is still not as big as it should be. There it is. It's still very hard to tell. I'll likely put some photos somewhere. But what you can see is that they are both peep sights. They both have a little tiny bit hole on them. They don't have a ghost ring. Ghost rings, I believe, came after the XM16E2. So for this rifle, M16E1, XM16E1, and the E2, you would want a simple peep sight. And it's also the right profile of sight. I don't know if you can tell, but it's a circle and then narrows down to the bottom and then widens up again. I'll again put a photo somewhere on the video to show what I mean. It's not a tombstone shaped rear sight, so it's great. Again, hard to see, hard to notice, but there's an L marking on the rear sight, which would imply this is put on the long range setting, which is for above 250 meters, if I'm not mistaken. I will put a note somewhere on on screen to corroborate that. The one thing about the rear sight, however, is that it's insanely tight. I haven't been able to flip this from the long range setting into the normal setting. I don't know why it's so tight, but it is. And to prove that I'm not kidding, okay, this is a perfectly fine normal finger. Now let me just try to push that thing through. Yeah, it's not moving. It is absolutely positively not moving, which is, at least they made these things very tight. They don't have any wobble, which is great, but I haven't been able to flip the selector over, which again, kind of funny. Continuing on this side, now that we're at it, another great detail about this XM16 that makes me incredibly happy is this little tiny hole at the base of the receiver. That actually is a pin or rolled pin that would originally hold the buffer or the receiver extension, as it's called, in place on these earlier rifles. This is exclusive to XM16s and earlier rifles, which is again a great detail to actually have on the VFC. Frankly, it made me so incredibly happy to actually see it reproduce, and it has a pin, and I believe it works, which is great, right? And again, just to illustrate what I mean, if we look at this M16, you will see also there is a clear lack of a hole at the base of the receiver, which is again great. One thing that I actually forgot to mention about the fencing actually is that you will notice there is no hole on the fencing as well. If you look at an M16E1, you will see a hole here that will allow you to see the spring that holds the detent for the front pin, as well as potentially, get any water out and that kind of stuff. But yeah, you have it here, but you don't have it on the XM16, which is another great detail. Nowhere to be seen, which is again, great. Again, continuing with the other side before I divulge too much. Another great detail and feature of these early rifles is the dimpled controls. You will see these controls have a bit of a dot, a bit of a hole in the middle. And that is not just a manufacturing reason, there's nothing at all. It's the fact that originally you would use these holes to disassemble and push in and push through these pins using the tip of a cartridge. You would get your cartridge, you would line it up on the middle, and that would allow you to give you a bit more pressure to pull the pin through, both sides. And now that we're speaking of pins, we should be able to actually take it apart. So we go out, and again, push it with the tip of a cartridge on the other side as well. And that would allow us to disassemble the rifle and break it in two. I'm going to break it in two now. Normally you can just, swivel it open, but for the sake of this video, I'm just going to take it apart on both sides, which is again very simple, very straightforward, works just fine. The rear pin is usually a bit tighter than the front pin is usually a bit tighter than the back pin, which is just fine, and that gives us a chance to look at the internals, which they are very cool. I like the fact that you have everything. You have your hammer, you have your full auto sear, it works just fine. You got your valve knocker, but that is very discreet. Matter of fact, I would say that if you were to take a photo of yourself disassembling this on the field at like a reenacting event, you will look on par with the rear one, which is great to see. You know, those little details count, at least to me. And of course, you know, works more or less like the real thing. And again, you got your full auto sear. If you pull it to full auto, that would actually allow you to, you know, works like the real thing, which is great. It's really cool. So yeah, of course, you got your buffer on the inside. I haven't really modified any of the internals yet. So that's just the lower, I guess. Looking at the upper, to take the bolt out is very simple. You pull the charging handle back, and that will allow you to remove the bolt, which I'll get to in just a minute. And after that, you can take the charging handle out, which is, again, a very, very simple, straightforward piece, just fine. Now, the bolt itself is the right bolt for an XM16, and I wanted to kind of get into it. It's chromed. XM16 bolts, until the later ones, were not parkerized, they were chromed, hence they had this kind of silvery, shiny color. It is very nicely reproduced. You got the the teeth for the forward assist. Earlier bolts did not have this because this was used in conjunction with a button to, you know, push the bolt forward. So again, very nicely detailed. The nozzle, I think at one point I'm going to go out and change it simply because it's black. The bolt itself, because this is of course a carrier, the bolt itself would also be steel and chromed, so it would have the same color as the rest of the bolt. So this color isn't necessarily amazing. I've seen replacement parts that cost about $150 to change. The Ratec kits, maybe in the future I'll invest into one just for it to look good, but at the moment I'm not too fast. But yeah, it's perfectly fine, looks pretty good. And one of the things that is very curious is the fact that the bolt actually has a marking. I don't know if it's how visible it is on camera, but you can see that C marking on it, and that is meant for cold. It's a cold-proof mark, right? However, this marking did not come out until 1967, I believe. I'll put again a stamp on in the screen if I get this wrong, which is funny. It's fine, you're not going to see it, but you know, it shouldn't be there, but it's there, and it looks cool. At least I was impressed when I took it apart. But yeah, just a bit of a fun anecdote. And it's still a bit greasy and oily from the factory, as I really haven't done much with it. And yeah, to put it back, what you do is you start with the charging handle. You fit that first, going from up to the top, and then you can you put the gas key first, and then you just push the rest forward. I like to close the dust cover before I put the two receivers together. And now it's also very simple. You just line it up, you push that pin through. We're now hinging, and this is normally how you would take it apart. You can just, again, pull the bolt back this way. As said, I like to keep that dust cover closed, because if you don't, and then you close the receiver, I don't know if you can see it, but there's already a bunch of wear there from the paint ripping off from this rather sharp surface. But yeah, and once you put it in, you can, that actually gets me to another thing. It's really hard to push that pin through for some reason, only when it's in full auto. If I flip the rifle around, you can tell it's on full auto. This is likely the sear exerting pressure on the upper receiver and not really allowing it to pull through. However, if I flip the gun around, flip it to semi all the way, and then push, it goes in just fine. So that's if you struggle to put your two receivers together, just flip it to semi and it will fit just fine. Just a quick function check. Works all good. So yeah, great. Now we have the bolt catch. Bolt catch, of course, again, works like the real thing. If you, again, pull back on the bolt and press on the bottom of the bolt catch, it will lock back. Oof, owie, my wall, which is great. And of course, if you go out and you push the top of the bolt catch, it will go forward with a very nice satisfying noise, which is great. This bolt catch was the one that normally would have been adopted with this rifle. However, there's an interim version that would have been nice to see, as to depict an earlier rifle, which would have serrations at the very bottom of the bolt catch, really, between this piece and this piece. I'll put an image somewhere on screen to illustrate what I mean, which would be the early XM16, and you will still see it in rifles up to 1965, 66, I believe, which would be, again, nice to see to make it a bit of an earlier rifle. This is fine, but would have been cool to have the earlier features. Same thing with the magazine magazine release. There would also be a dimple on this piece as well. That would have been nice to see to make it an earlier rifle, but that should be fine. Again, same thing, we got our front pin. We've already talked about pins. Now, also, one of the things that makes me very happy about this rifle is the markings. The markings are all spot on. We got Colt AR-15, the Prancing Pony, property of US government, XM16E1, caliber 5.56, serial number. In this case, it's I believe the 209th rifle made by VFC, which is neat for anyone that cares. And then you got Colt Patents Firearms Manufacturing Company, Hartford, Connecticut, USA. Safe semi-auto, all that good stuff. Looks perfectly fine. The serial number range on these would kind of date it, I believe, late 1965, 1966, something of the sort. I'll put an image somewhere, which again would have been nicer to have one of the earlier rifles, but that's just me nitpicking a number. It's not that big of a deal. These are laser etched, I believe, and I think the AL on the marking is a bit too deeply etched by the looks of it. I think the 5 on AR-15 also is, but oddly enough, I've seen rifles that also have that 5 very big marked on like actual XM16s and M16s. But anyways, yeah, markings on this side are great, and on the other side they're also very good. I'll have to put a photo somewhere on image, on screen, because they're very small. But you would have a C in a square and a VP marking. The C in a square, it's the cold proof stamp to prove that this thing is up to spec, it's quality. And the VP would have been again a verified proof to make sure that that proof is not a lie and it is genuine and everything's fine. So it's again great to actually see it reproduced. This is not something that you often see reproduced on these kind of replicas, so it's great to actually see it done, and it's very, very nice detail for an XM16 or an earlier rifle of this kind. Moving forward, we have our slip ring. Delta ring would be the one that is tapered. This is technically a slip ring. Very simple. You pull this back and that allows you to take the handguards off. On the VFC XM16, much like the rest of the rifle, it is really tight, so much so that I pinched the crap out of my hand putting the 2 handguards together, given how tight this thing is. I haven't taken them out yet, taken the handguards out yet, because again, they're so incredibly tight that you would likely need a tool. On my real M16, I can do it really easily, but on the Airsoft replica, I can't. You likely, again, need a tool. I haven't tried to put on the XM148 on yet. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a pain in the ass, because again, those are incredibly tight, and it's likely going to scratch the top of the slip ring, which would be a bit of a shame. But anyways, it fits fine. There's also like little wobble, if any at all, which is again also great, even though real ones still have a insane amount of wobble. But again, it's good to have a nice tight replica, so that's cool. Handguards, much like we spoke previously, these are an original early 1960s pair, well, early mid 1960s pair. That came with a set. Again, everything came as one. So again, very nice. These are the ones that actually come with the replica. Let me fetch them. Here you go. Perfectly serviceable, really. They're nothing particularly extraordinary. They're very matte black, I think, with some, maybe some wax, some beeswax or anything else, so you can polish them a little bit and get them a bit shinier, as that would be nice. They've also reproduced the later type handguards, like the late to the end of Vietnam, or the war in Vietnam, sorry, I'm all over the place, style handguards with the L and R markings. The L and R stands for left and right. If you weren't aware, these are symmetric, so they're not interchangeable. You have a left side and you have a right side. And again, that marking was only really done on the later handguards, but yeah, still fine, perfectly serviceable. No one really cares about the marking on the inside, but I still prefer to have original ones. But it's always good to just have a pair to, say, beat up or something. So yeah, that's the handguards. Now, we get to the front sight. Now, they've got almost every single detail right on this rifle. But what they didn't get right was the front sight. Somehow, it evaded them. When it came out of the box, it had a line in the middle. Let me actually see if I can get a different angle. There we go, if the camera is actually focusing. There will be a line right there in the middle. And that line would not have been there in a rifle of this era. It only really appeared, from what I believe, after 1969. Before that, that line was machined off. So they would just grind it off. Because these parts were forged, so that line would be the forging line. I guess you could say the seam, even. So yeah, it wouldn't have it. It's not very hard to change, really. You can just file it off, sand the surface, and then paint it like I have within, again, the first 2 hours I had this rifle. It was on both sides and the front as well. I think that's going to be a bit challenging to show, maybe. No, there it is. It's no longer there. But yeah, somehow that eluded them. Also, there's a, I don't know how clear that's going to be to show on camera, but here there's a draining hole for the front side post, which also shouldn't be there. I think that only really appeared after 1967. So that's me getting really nitpicky, but those two details are far more incorrect, and that makes this whole rifle absolutely worthless. Nah, I'm kidding. But yeah, relatively easy to change. It's just funny that they got almost everything right, but they didn't get that right. Continuing on with things that are still actually really good is the front sling swivel, rubberized as well. You will also see the fact that it has a rolled pin actually holding the front sling swivel in place. It does not have a rivet, which is great. That's, again, another great detail, which would happen on early, well, wartime M16E1s as well as XM16s and all the rifles that came before. This is, again, a very late war and post-war M16E1. And you can see that is being held by a rivet, not a rolled pin. So again, another great detail that they got absolutely right on this replica, which is very small, but the fact that they got it right is, again, big thumbs up for me. Continuing on amazing details, on the barrel you will see an M marking as well as a VP marking. Same thing, verified proof, and the M marking stands for magnetic particle tested, which is, again, they would test the rifle after firing to make sure there was no defect in it. So again, that marking appeared from 1963, I believe. I will need to double check on that. I put a date somewhere, but again, great to have it, very well done. So again, big thumbs up on them. The barrel itself has a bit of texture to them. It's not completely smooth like it would be on a real one. I would have liked that, but you know, that's fine. And you also have another marking, which I don't know how that's going to be visible on camera, but you have a number 12. Again, I'll put a photo somewhere. And that's, again, another great marking. Those markings were added on barrels from 1963 up to 1967. So again, great for this kind of rifle, perfectly accurate. And again, huge thumbs up to them to getting that detail right. Continuing forward, you have the correct use of the 3-prong flash hider. Fucking everyone likes to put them on their M16s for some reason, but you know, the XM16 is the one that should ideally have it, other than, you know, the M16 and rifles that came prior. But again, great to have it. Very well done, very heavy. I believe it's steel and it may be barkerized. I don't need to double check with a magnet, but it's, again, very nice, very nicely made, very realistic. Also incredibly tight. I was not able to take the this piece off, so for me to refinish the front side base, I actually had to do it on the rifle. So I taped the entirety of this and then painted, well, file and paint it while keeping it on the rifle. So it is really tight. You're not going to lose it anytime soon, and it's, again, very nicely detailed, which, again, compared to what the M16 will come up with later on, which would be a A1 style bird cage. So again, great to actually have it there. One of the things that I want to test as well is the bayonet, actually, because of course it has a bayonet lug. So here we have a nice original bayonet. This is an Imperial made one, so we can check if it fits. And I want to be very gentle with it because I don't want to really mess up the paint. And yeah, it does fit just fine, and it matches the color pretty well, I would say. And yeah, this is now funny Yadrang rifle, the most battle ever. Anyways, yeah, it fits, very nice, very cool. I like that. So yeah, great, another very good detail. And now let's just have a very quick look at the magazine as well before we conclude this review, as I'm sure you guys want to see it. Magazine, just fine. This is aluminum. I got a big oil stain on my hand now. Aluminum made, not steel, plastic top. You have this switch at the top that basically allows you to bypass the bolt catch. So when the switch is forward, the bolt will lock to the rear on an empty magazine, and when you lock it to the back, it will not. So it will just fire indefinitely. Again, very nicely colored. Here we have an original magazine. So they're relatively close in color. Not too bad. Pretty much identical in size. These are a bit more rounded than our original magazine. I don't know if that's really something that's going to come up on camera, but yeah, these are more rounded. Marking wise, they're great. Here we have, oh sorry, let me just get another magazine for those markings actually. Normally they would look like this, which makes them not match that much, but you know, this is a very worn magazine. But if we look at the markings, Again, hard to see on camera, hard to appreciate, but they do look pretty good. The one thing is that, you know, you got your Cold Air 15 markings, that kind of stuff. It's a 5.56 magazine, and I believe these magazines only came out in 1969, at least with those markings. Well, 1968, 1969, late war. Normally the magazines that I believe would have come with this rifle would be marked 223, which would have been nice to have, but I'm nitpicking on the markings on a magazine, so I'm not, you know, it's not a huge deal, but it would have been nice to have. Just pointing it out there for anyone that actually cares. And now, let's just have a very quick function check, quote unquote. Let me just put some gas in it to show you how it fires. Of course, no leaks, no issues whatsoever. We're having room temperature ball of gas and magazine, so it should perform just fine. We're going to try with the bolt lock back just to illustrate how that works. So let's see, works just fine. So let me just again do a bit of a shoot just to show you. Yep, that works as it should. So, whoop. So I'm here still always closing the dust cover. Now let me just push this button down and you will see the follower dropping down. Flip the switch. And let's just do a very quick. It does sound very good. I don't know if you can hear it from the front, but it goes bing when you fire. But yeah, works pretty good, as you can tell. Oh, actually, one of the things that I forgot to mention, and that actually kind of impressed me, taking this apart, one of the things, pet peeves that people have about GBBRs is the bolt catch wearing out, as we've spoken prior. The bolt itself actually has a small steel part, hard to see on camera, again I'm trying for it to focus, but that part right there is steel. The bolt catch itself is also steel, and I was actually concerned that the steel is gonna, you know, interact with this aluminum part, and it's gonna wear it out. It's gonna, you know, smooth the surface. It's not gonna work anymore. But VFC had thought about it, and actually it's steel on steel, so it's gonna be way more resistant, and the bolt lock is actually gonna work for a longer duration of time, so you wouldn't have to worry about it breaking anytime soon. But yeah, that's it. That's the VFC XM16, just my concluding thoughts now. I am very happy with this. I bought mine, well actually I pre-ordered it I think the first day that they came out on JK Army. There's people that apparently think these are a limited issue, so if you want one, I would buy yours as soon as you can. Yeah, I bought mine again early October on JK Army. I think at the time they were $550, and then there was 120 in shipping and 100 something in customs. So in total, it would have been $650, $700, something of the sort. I sold a bunch of replicas to afford it. I'm not that rich, unfortunately. Yeah, shipped relatively quick. I think it's worth the price. They are well built. I don't really feel like they're going to break anytime soon. The detail on this is great, frankly. Other than the color, if the color was grayish, it would have been so good. It would have been so good. But otherwise, it looks great. The details are great. Having a company that actually takes reproducing early retro AR-15s right is always great, especially when it doesn't cost Viprotech or DNA money. Which is not money that I have, or the patience to wait for them to actually put it together. Maybe one day. But yeah, I do feel it's great. You know, original furniture fits. I think it looks very good. Most of the issues that you may have, especially again color-wise on the front side, is stuff that you can change. Yeah, I would definitely say that it's worth looking into if you are interested in, say, reenacting, or you like collecting this kind of replicas. And I think it would also look very nicely with the XM148. If one day I get around putting it on, I'll show you guys, but at the moment it's not in my plans. But yeah, no, I would say it's well reproduced. It's nice. It's not perfect. There's still that chestnut. It's not perfect yet, but we're getting there. And yeah, I would again definitely recommend it to you guys if this is what you're into. and if you're willing to potentially put the work into it to make it look even better. But yeah, I guess that kind of concludes the video. I'm kind of rattling my brain to make sure that I haven't forgotten anything, so I don't have to add anything in post. And I also see that my camera is dying. But yeah, sorry for the also kind of long video. I kind of expected it to be a bit shorter than it actually was. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any experience with it, if you have any thoughts about this, do let me know. And yeah, do like, subscribe, comment, whatever the fuck those things are. You know I don't really care that much about it. And yeah, I'll see you next time. If you got any other ideas for future videos, you let me know below. And yeah, you take care, and hope you liked it.